Missiles are flying, alliances are shifting, and a stateless army of thousands is waiting for a single signal to march on Tehran.
It is, yeah, it's a powder keg right now.
Let's get right into the reality on the ground for this deep dive, because we're looking at a really volatile, rapidly evolving situation.
Absolutely.
It is March 2026. The U.S. and Israel launched a major war against Iran just over a week ago, starting on February 28th.
Right.
And now you've got these heavily armed Kurdish factions based in northern Iraq, and they are actively debating a massive ground offensive.
With the ultimate goal of completely toppling the Iranian regime.
Exactly. So we're pulling from a pretty fascinating stack of sources today to track these moving pieces. We've got on-the-ground human rights reports from the Henga organization.
Yeah, those are detailed.
We have strategic political analysis from the Quincy Institute, plus mainstream global news from Global News, Al Hurra, and even Wikipedia to fill in the gaps.
Just a quick note before we jump in, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
We are looking at some highly charged, real-time geopolitical and political events today.
For sure.
I mean, this involves everything from the Trump administration's foreign policy decisions to active military ops by various Iranian factions.
Right.
So our goal here isn't to take sides or endorse any of these actions. We are strictly here to map out the chessboard, understand the different perspectives and the sources, and give you, the listener, a clear picture of exactly how the pieces are moving.
Well said. And speaking of how the pieces are moving, we've got to start with the human toll. The battlefield reality is hitting civilian populations incredibly hard right out of the gate.
It really is. Henga reports at least 21 Kurdish civilians have been killed across the region since these airstrikes started.
21?
Yeah, and these are people caught in a strategic crossfire. The reports document some just devastating losses. I mean, there's a 75-year-old man, Abu Bakr Mughmi.
Right, in Mahabad.
Exactly. He died when a local police station in Mahabad was bombed. Then in Pave, airstrikes killed a 60-year-old fruit vendor named Asad Mohammadi.
And it's hitting kids, too, which is just, it's awful.
Yeah. Mahanzara, a 14-year-old 8th grader from Kamiran, and a 16-year-old girl, Hasti Mohammadi, in Ravansar, both lost their lives.
Which raises the obvious question. With advanced military targeting, U.S. and Israeli precision bombs, why is the collateral damage so high in these specific areas?
Well, it's a tactical reality of how the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operates. The IRGC deliberately embeds its garrisons.
Right in the middle of cities.
Exactly. Directly inside or adjacent to densely populated residential areas.
Wow.
So when U.S. and Israeli bombs drop on those military targets, the blast radius inevitably shatters the surrounding neighborhoods.
So the massive collateral damage is basically a built-in feature of the conflict.
Sadly, yes. The human geography guarantees it.
Okay, but Iran isn't just absorbing these hits without firing back, right?
Definitely not. Iran is lashing out aggressively across the border. They've launched over 70 missiles and drones at Kurdish bases located in neighboring Iraq.
Yeah, I saw that detail in the Global News report about Ali Mahmoud Awera.
The fighter with the peak.
Right, the Kurdistan Freedom Party. An Iranian Faka missile completely leveled his commander's office outside Erbil.
Yeah.
And that strike killed Kawan Rashidi, who was this veteran fighter who'd been with the group for a decade.
And we should note, Fata missiles are hypersonic ballistic weapons.
Which means they're fast.
Unbelievably fast. They are designed to evade standard air defenses and hit targets with devastating speed. Using them shows Iran is pulling out high-end munitions to send a really lethal message.
And the fallout goes way beyond just the military bases, right?
Oh, absolutely. The constant security threat from these drones and missiles actually forced the Khormor gas field to completely suspend operations.
That's huge.
It is. That single shutdown plunged the broader region into massive electricity blackouts. Millions of people suddenly lost power, heat.
It's a total disruption of daily life.
Yeah.
Hospitals, food supplies, the whole economy.
Yeah, the ripple effects are enormous.
Yet right in the middle of all this chaos, these Kurdish fighters are aggressively organizing this major offensive we mentioned.
Right. So just days before the U.S. and Israeli strikes officially began, 5 of the largest exiled Kurdish parties formed a brand new alliance.
This was on February 22nd, 2026.
Correct. They call it the Coalition of Political Forces of Iranian Kurdistan, or the CPFIK.
Okay, CPFIK, who's in it?
It unites major groups including the KDPI, the PAK, PJAK, Khabat, and Komala.
So what's their ultimate endgame here? I mean, their charter spells out some incredibly ambitious goals.
First and foremost, their charter demands the total overthrow of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Total regime change.
Yes. They want to replace the current regime with a secular, democratic state that guarantees full gender equality and finally secures Kurdish self-determination.
Okay, but how do they actually plan to pull that off militarily against a deeply entrenched, heavily armed state apparatus like the IRGC?
They're planning to leverage generations of mountain warfare experience.
Right, the Zagros Mountain.
Exactly. The Quincy Institute analysis highlights both the tactical genius and the huge risk of this strategy. These seasoned fighters know that rugged terrain intimately.
So if they cross the border from Iraq into western Iran,
They force the IRGC to fight a chaotic, multi-front war.
by opening a brand new ground front in the mountains, they force the regime to divert troops, heavy weapons, and supply lines away from major Iranian cities.
You've got it. Stretching the Iranian military across multiple axes weakens the regime's security grip on those urban centers.
So the Kurdish coalition is essentially betting that if the internal security forces are distracted fighting a guerrilla war in the mountains,
It could provide the opening needed to spark a massive nationwide popular uprising in the cities.
that is a massive gamble. Which brings us to this fascinating dynamic in Washington.
Oh, the mixed signals.
The incredibly mixed signals. The U.S. is saying two totally different things about this potential ground war.
Well, you have President Donald Trump publicly encouraging the Kurdish fighters.
Right, he said in an interview, "I think it's wonderful that they want to do that. I'd be all for it."
He reportedly even called Iraqi Kurdish leaders directly to request military support and asked them to open their borders so the fighters can cross into Iran.
But then you have to measure the president's public rhetoric against the official policy statements coming out of his own administration.
Yeah, the contrast is sharp. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt vehemently denied that the U.S. has any plans to arm these Kurdish militias. She called those reports devoid of factual basis.
And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth backed that up. He clarified to reporters that U.S. objectives are not centered on supporting or arming any particular ground force.
So we have the president essentially saying, go for it, on national television,
While his top defense officials are actively stating they're not providing weapons or direct support.
which puts neighboring countries in an impossible position, particularly Iraq.
Baghdad must be terrified of being dragged into a wider regional conflict.
Completely. I mean, Iraq spent years fighting a brutal war with Iran in the 1980s, and they're still rebuilding from the devastation of fighting ISIS.
Didn't they just sign a deal with Iran recently?
They did. In 2023, the Iraqi government signed a binding security pact with Iran. In that agreement, Iraq promised to disarm these exact Kurdish opposition groups and relocate them away from the Iranian border.
And now those same groups are gearing up to launch an invasion of Iran from Iraqi soil. That's a diplomatic nightmare.
It really is. Iraq is frantically moving its own military forces to seal the border right now. They're trying to physically block Kurdish infiltration into Iran, hoping to prevent Tehran from blaming Baghdad and turning Iraq into a secondary battlefield.
Okay, this leads to the ultimate million-dollar question. If these Kurdish groups have the manpower, the mountain expertise, and the explicit desire to topple the regime,
Why are they still sitting in their camps waiting for a signal?
exactly, why haven't they marched yet?
The hesitation is rooted in a really brutal historical pattern. Kurdish leaders view American alliances with profound skepticism.
A history of betrayal.
Yeah. The Quincy Institute details how the U.S. consistently utilizes Kurdish fighters to advance American strategic goals, only to discard them as a spent asset once the geopolitical winds shift.
The timeline is staggering when you actually lay it out.
Let's look at the record. In 1975, the CIA funded a Kurdish revolt against Iraq to keep Baghdad distracted.
And then,
The moment the Shah of Iran and Saddam Hussein signed the Algiers Accord resolving their border dispute, the U.S. instantly cut off all funding and left the Kurds to face Saddam's wrath completely alone.
and the pattern just keeps repeating. Look at 1991. The Bush administration openly urged Iraqi Kurds to rise up following the Gulf War.
The Kurds took the cities, expecting U.S. air support, but U.S. forces just stood by and watched as Saddam's Republican Guard systematically crushed the uprising.
Jump to 2017. Iraqi Kurds held an independence referendum, voting overwhelmingly to secede, when Iraqi federal troops and Iranian-backed militias attacked them weeks later.
Washington chose total non-intervention.
The Kurds lost massive amounts of territory they had bled to capture fighting ISIS.
And we don't even need to look back a decade. Just weeks ago.
January 2026.
Exactly. The United States dissolved 10 years of Syrian Kurdish autonomy in a matter of days. Washington brokered a deal handing Kurdish-held territory over to Ahmed al-Shara's new Syrian government.
And ordered Kurdish forces to integrate into the Syrian military.
So knowing all that, it makes complete sense why Kurdish leaders are balking when Washington suggests they start a ground war in Iran 44 days later.
They need more than just a thumbs up.
They are demanding binding, concrete security guarantees, actual treaties, not just encouraging words in a television interview.
Because the vulnerability for the civilian population is extreme.
Right. If the Kurdish fighters launch an offensive, and the U.S. suddenly signs a ceasefire with Tehran to stabilize global oil markets,
the mobile guerrilla fighters can melt back into the Zagros Mountains. They know the caves and the survival routes.
But the millions of Kurdish civilians living in densely packed cities like Sanandaj, Kermanshah, and Elam, they can't hide in a cave.
Without direct U.S. military cover, those cities are left completely exposed.
And the IOGC has a long, documented doctrine of inflicting massive collective punishment on accessible civilian populations when they can't catch mobile insurgents.
So for Kurdish leadership, launching this attack without ironclad American guarantees is gambling with millions of civilian lives.
That historical fear of abandonment is exactly what makes Iran's current defense strategy so effective. They know the Kurds are hesitating, which buys Tehran time to leverage what the Quincy Institute calls an industrial war.
Okay, let's talk about that. Industrial war.
Yeah.
How does Iran fight back against American stealth bombers?
Iran's strategy doesn't rely on winning a conventional head-to-head battle. They simply need to outlast the political clock in Washington.
Ow.
They manufacture cheap, attritable drones in decentralized, flat networks.
I want to break down that term, attritable, because military jargon can get dense. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Attritable essentially means kamikaze warfare on a budget. These drones are so incredibly cheap and simple to produce that the Iranian military expects them to be destroyed.
They're expendable.
Exactly. They don't care if they lose 100 of them in a single day. Furthermore, a flat network means they aren't building these weapons in massive multi-billion-dollar military factories that are easy to spot on a satellite.
Oh, so they're building them in, what, scattered basements?
Basements, auto garages, small civilian workshops across the country.
So the U.S. drops a highly sophisticated $2 million bomb to destroy a drone workshop.
And the Iranians just move the operation to a different basement 3 blocks away the next morning.
It traps the U.S. military in an incredibly expensive game of whack-a-mole.
The tactical question isn't whether American jets can hit the targets. It is whether the American political system can stomach the massive economic fallout while waiting for the production to stop.
Because all this disruption hits the global markets hard.
Exactly. Iran is banking on the assumption that Washington cannot handle months of oil prices spiking over $80 a barrel and the resulting chaos in global shipping lanes.
They just want to drag out the economic pain until domestic pressure forces the U.S. to back off.
That's the playbook.
Okay, while military strategists are watching oil prices and political clocks, there's this entirely different, bizarre twist to this story.
Oh, this is wild.
An entirely different group of people is treating this global crisis like a casino. We are seeing millions of dollars wagered on the exact outcomes of these military strikes.
Yeah, the explosion of prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi has basically gamified geopolitical conflict.
Users are buying shares in an outcome, much like trading stocks.
Right. And a staggering $255 million was wagered specifically on the strikes related to this U.S.-Iran
Imagine
conflict.
finding out your
So essentially, we have
Wall Street crypto bros sitting in their pajamas, treating classified military airstrikes like it's a Sunday football
when you
parlay.
actually look at the math.
But
But the timing
Right.
of these bets
Well,
points to
imagine for a
something
second
much
that
darker
you
than
have a
just random
savings account.
gambling.
Yeah, let's get into
And,
the insider trading angle, because
you swore
the
to your
data
family,
strongly
hand
suggests
over heart,
insider trading on a
that this
massive
money was
global
strictly for
scale.
fixing a
Hours
leaking roof.
before an attack hit Tehran,
You said,
an
we
account
don't
operating
fix this
under the
roof,
name Magami
the
Man
house is going to collapse.
made over
It's an existential crisis for the
$500,000
house.
Exactly,
by
it's the
correctly
Save the House
betting that
fund.
Iran's
But then,
supreme
your car
leader
breaks
would
down,
vacate his
you
office
spend a little too
before
much
the
on
end of
groceries,
March.
you've
And
got
that's
bills
not the
piling
only
up.
one.
So what do?
Half a dozen
You raid the
separate
roof
accounts
fund.
collectively
You
made
take that money, pay
$1.2
off your
million
credit cards,
betting
and tell your
that
family,
the
hey,
U.S.
don't
would
worry, we'll
strike
fix the
Iran
roof later.
Precisely. And in
by
this
February
scenario,
28th.
the
And
roof
here's
is the
the
planet,
smoking gun.
or at least
Those
Maryland's
bets were
climate
placed
goals.
using
And the car
cryptocurrency
is a
wallets
massive,
funded just the day
self-inflicted
before the war officially started.
$1.5 billion
When you analyze
state
that
budget
volume
deficit.
of
A
money
completely
moving that
avoidable
quickly
deficit,
right
I might add.
before a major
Welcome to the
military
deep
operation.
dive.
It indicates
Today
that
we're
individuals
exploring a
possess
classic case
classified
of
inside
fiscal sleight of
information.
hand coming
Someone
out of
knew the
Annapolis.
exact date
We are
the U.S.
looking
and
at the
Israel were going to
Strategic
strike,
Energy
and they used
Investment
that
Fund,
secret knowledge to
the
cash in.
SAFE. This fundamentally
It's a
changes the
huge pot
incentive
of money
structures around
meant
modern
to save the
warfare.
environment.
It is a
But it's turning
profound
into a
national
hidden
security
tax
threat.
on
Think
every
about
single
it.
person
If you
paying an
gamify
electric
classified
bill in
intelligence,
Maryland.
you create
It really
a
is.
financial
It's become the
incentive
center
for
of a
rogue actors
huge
to leak
political
sensitive
fight.
military
You've
plans.
got a Democratic
Or worse,
governor, frustrated
intentionally provoke a
environmentalists making
conflict
some very
just to
awkward
cash out their
compromises,
positions
and
on
conservative
polymarket.
critics who are
Furthermore,
rightly
if
calling this
foreign
whole thing a
intelligence
shell
agencies
game.
A shell
monitor
game.
these betting platforms,
And when you look at the
a
documents we
sudden
have today,
massive spike in
reports,
wagers could act
budget
as an early
proposals,
warning
critiques from
system.
Senate
Tipping off
Republicans,
adversaries
it is
to
really hard to
classified
unsee it.
U.S.
Our
troop
mission for this deep
movements.
dive is
Directly
simple. Follow the
endangering
money.
soldiers'
Always
lives.
follow the money.
There are
We are going to
attempts in
see how a
Congress to reel
fund
this in.
designed to fight climate
House
change
Bill
is
H.R.
being used to plug
7004
holes in the state
aims
budget.
to ban
And we'll dig
elected
into the
officials
argument
and
that
political
this isn't found money
appointees
at
from
all. This is
participating in
essentially
prediction
a backdoor
markets
tax
if they
on
hold
families.
non-public information.
Let's get right into
The
it.
regulatory
The Strategic
push is
Energy Investment
complicated,
Fund.
though,
It sounds
by
very
deep
official,
political
very
ties.
important.
The
What
sources
does it
point out
actually
that
do?
Donald Trump
Well,
Jr. currently
on paper,
serves as an
it is the
advisor to
state's
Polymarket,
green
a
piggy
platform
bank.
that was recently
SIF
committed
is
to
managed
return
by
to
the
the US
Maryland
market.
Energy
So the
Administration.
intersection of
Its whole
classified
stated purpose
access,
is to
political
reduce energy
influence,
bills,
and unregulated
cut
offshore
waste,
betting
and fund
presents a
renewable
glaring
energy.
vulnerability
Like
in
solar
the system.
panels
It's
and
a huge
efficiency
blind
upgrades.
spot.
So
Exactly.
bringing this all back,
But here is the
why does
real
all this
aha
matter
moment
to you
of the
listening
story.
right now? Because the ripple effects of
Where
this
does the
conflict are
money
landing
actually
right on your
come
doorstep.
from?
The drone
Because
war
they aren't
and the
just
sudden
taxing
shutdown
you
of
directly
major
for
energy
it.
facilities are
No,
driving
and that's
up
why
global
politicians
energy
absolutely
prices.
love it. It feels
That
free.
impacts the
So
cost
about
of your
40%
commute,
comes from
your
regional
utility
carbon
bills.
auctions.
The threats to regional
But the
shipping
big
lanes
chunk, the one
disrupt the
growing like
very
crazy,
supply chains
comes from
that
something
deliver
called
goods to your
alternative
local
compliance
stores.
payments. And the reality
Or
that anonymous
ACPs,
insiders
Which is
might
just
be
a fancy
making
government
millions
term
off
for a
classified
fine.
war
Right.
plans.
It's a fine for
raises
failure.
serious
Let me break
ethical
it down.
questions about
Maryland
the integrity
law
of the
forces
decisions
utility
driving global
companies to
security.
buy a certain
I want to
amount
leave you
of
with
green
one
energy.
final
They have
thought
to prove
to
they're using
consider,
renewables.
building on what we've
But if they
unpacked
can't find
today.
that green energy,
The
or if
sources
it's just way too
detail the
expensive on the
vast
market,
network
which
of
it usually
Iran's
is.
axis
yeah,
of
the state gives them an
resistance.
escape
Right.
hatch.
This includes
The utility
heavily
can just
armed
pay a fee
proxy
directly to the
militias
state
like
instead.
Hezbollah in
That fee
Lebanon,
is the ACP.
the Houthis
And
in
here's the
Yemen,
kicker.
and various groups
Utilities
operating in
are
Iraq and
increasingly
Syria.
For
just paying the
decades,
fine
Tehran has
because it's
provided
cheaper
their
than
funding,
actually
weapons,
buying
and
the green
strategic
energy.
direction. Wait,
Exactly.
the
So if
climate
the
fund
Kurdish
is
offensive
getting
actually
incredibly
succeeds
rich.
and the Islamic Republic regime
Precisely
completely
because
collapses under the
green
weight of this
energy mandates are
multi-front war.
failing. What fills that
Precisely,
massive
it is a
power vacuum?
completely perverse
Without Tehran
incentive.
pulling the
The
strings and
government
writing the
made the
checks,
mandates
do
so
those
aggressive
heavily
and the
armed
market is
proxy
so
groups
distorted
simply fade
that
away.
power companies are just
Or,
writing checks to the state
unbound by
instead of
any
going
central
green.
command
And the stats
structure,
on this are
do they
just
turn their
staggering.
weapons
They
inward
are.
and fracture
In
the entire
2022,
Middle East
this revenue
into a
was
dozen
$77 million.
unpredictable new
By
civil
2025,
wars?
A
it jumped to
collapsing regime doesn't guarantee peace.
$365
It
million.
often just hits the reset button
from
on a new kind of
77 million
chaos.
to
That's a lot.
365 million in
Thank
3
you for
years.
joining
Right,
us
so now
for
the
this
state
deep
has
dive.
this
We really appreciate you
massive
taking the time to
accidental pot
explore
of
these
gold.
complex
It's
sources with us.
supposedly for
We'll catch
green
you next time.
projects.